Caring for someone with dementia is one of the toughest journeys, but you don't have to do it alone. I'm Allison Schreier, and my experience caring for my husband inspired me to create Zinnia, a therapeutic streaming service designed to support people living with dementia and reduce caregiver stress. Our research-backed videos are engaging, easy to follow, and they help ease the daily challenges like agitation and anxiety so that you can focus on connection and joy. Available by subscription on mobile and TV apps, Zinnia makes every day a little bit easier. Go to zinniatv.com and sign up for a free trial today. Use the code RESOURCE for 15% off an annual Zinnia subscription.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeBay, and I'm so excited that you're joining us today. We are going to have a fascinating conversation, as usual, as we learn from people all around the world at all ages and stages of life. Stay tuned as we shift our dementia care from crisis to comfort. Here we go. What you think about, you will bring about. Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer Speaks. I'm thrilled you can join us today. We are going to be talking with author and son who was a caregiver, and he's written another book, and I can't wait to learn more about that. But our title for today is really Finding the Silver Lining in Alzheimer's, and not everybody thinks that's even possible. But before I go there and introduce you to him, I want to give just a couple of shout outs. There's lots of stuff going on. So one, Maud's Awards is open, and so you can apply until May 19th for $5,000 or $25,000. That is for work that you've already done. It's not a grant form, so it's really, really easy to do, and it's a pretty cool thing. So go to Maud's Awards and get that information there. We'll have information in the show notes on that too. If you're in Minnesota, Connections at CAT, which is a museum here, it's an art trust here in Shoreview, Minnesota. They've got a couple of programs that are dementia friendly coming up for Tuesday, May 20th and July 22nd. Also, Artist Senior Living is sponsoring a couple of online events. I will be doing one Thursday, April 10th, which will be virtual, and that will be primarily for professionals. And that's going to really be talking about shifting our care culture from crisis to comfort by practical strategies to manage challenging behaviors. And then that evening or early afternoon, depending on where you're located, I'll be doing one for families. It's entitled From Frustration to We've Got This. And again, it's all about navigating those dementia behaviors that we struggle with. And then if you're in Colorado, I will be down there on April 24th. They're doing their annual gala called Joy on the Journey. And again, this is for Dementia Together. It'll be Thursday, the 24th, and you can get more information by going to dementiatogether.org on that. And then our friend Linda Burhans she also has a radio show that she does for caregivers. But she also puts on a conference. And so she's got a 3-day online conference that is free for connecting caregivers. So you can check that out by going to connectingcaregiversconference.com. And I think that's all I'll give you for right now. And so let's go ahead and introduce you to our guest today. Well, Eliezer, I am so excited to have you back on the show. It's been quite a while. So how have you been?
To tell you the truth, I don't remember that I was on the show. I think we corresponded a lot.
Oh, no, you were on. It was years ago, though. It was, you had written another book. And it was years ago. I didn't have a chance to look it up, though.
So much for my my memory.
Because I remember struggling with how to pronounce your name. That's why. And I think I screwed it up royally.
My mother had Alzheimer's for 20 years, and my father took care of her until he was 90. And then he fell down the stairs and landed on his head and had a traumatic brain injury. So there were two dementia patients in my childhood home. And my wife and I moved in the same night that he fell, and we never went back to our life in Virginia of 25 years. And see, what was I saying? This happens to me a lot, and it happened to my mother at the beginning too. She would be saying, "Don't interrupt me, or I'll lose it." And I'll say, "Ma, okay, I won't." And she goes, "See, there it goes." So I'm noticing that in myself, which is a little unnerving, because I had a point I wanted to make about a minute ago.
Well, if it comes back, we welcome it.
Okay.
My mom lived with dementia for 30 years, and I know I'm 65 now, and I notice I will lose track at times, especially if I'm stressed. All my friends go, "Oh, that's normal, that's normal." And I'm like, "Well, we'll see. I'm just monitoring it. I haven't gotten into trouble or gotten lost driving the car or anything like that yet." But it's all those things. And I know, like sleep, I haven't been getting much of that lately, just because of what's going on with my life, and all those things can affect it. Not to belittle it, because especially when it runs in your family or someone has it.
My brother's 3.5 years older, and we're always wondering which of us got the Alzheimer's gene, or maybe neither of us, or maybe both of us. So we always report any little incidents. Mine so far are that I can't remember the TV series we started a few days ago. Nothing big. His similar, except one day he was searching for his keys and found them in the cheese drawer of the refrigerator. And that's one step further. So
Yep.
it's a crapshoot. We're both waiting to see who wins.
Yeah. Well, and you can have the gene and it may never take off,
Right.
just like we're probably all filled with different cancer genes, and some of us are going to get, hit by it, and others we're going to be able to fight it off. So it's one of those things where, you can get really paranoid and depressed, and paranoia and depression can cause it to come on, because then you isolate more. And I mean, it's kind of a dog chasing its tail if you go down that path. And
Although my experience with my mom made me less afraid, because I watched. This doesn't happen for everybody, obviously, but my mom was one of those people whose transformation with Alzheimer's was from a very uptight, fearful, angry, proper woman who was a refugee or a survivor of the Holocaust, and had a lot of fear of others, anybody other than our original family. But I saw her transform from that place, who I fought against all my life, into this magical, loving woman who radiated just, love to everybody who came in the house, whether it was a stranger or a friend or relative. And she laughed all the time, sometimes with no reason. So I saw her. I actually went to a psychic when it first started happening, and said, "I'm afraid my mother's is losing her mind or her memories." And the psychic took a moment and said, "I think your mother's going to be a lot happier without her memories." And it was true. As the horrors of the Holocaust disappeared, her essence revealed itself. Like whoever she was as a child, or even probably when I was a child, it just came back, and she was delighted with everything and everybody. And so I ended up. That's why I call the book. I have a book. Does anybody know that?
yeah.
I just put this out: The Silver Lining of Alzheimer's, one son's journey into the mystery. A lot of it is about this transformation, and how I actually ended up, unlike most people for whom it's only this tragic, sad event where they're gradually losing their loved one. I felt the exact opposite, that I was grateful to Alzheimer's because it was bringing my mother and our relationship back to me in a way that I hadn't felt since I was 3 or 4, where my heart was open. I wasn't fighting her anymore or defending. I just loved her and she loved me back. And there's kind of a mantra in the book that says connection is everything. Because what I realized is that it really didn't matter to me that she didn't know my name or that she didn't know I was her son, but there was something on an essential soul level where we recognized each other. And that was all that mattered to me, that we were connected. And the rest was just content. And, I often think what it would be like to have an infant baby. That baby comes out without any memories, with no name initially, and yet the mother especially feels really deeply organically connected to the infant, and has nothing to do with memories or language or any of that. And that's how I felt with my mom.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying she didn't. I like to say I didn't sugarcoat our 20 years, because we saw all the horrific aspects of the disease as well. There was a period where she got very violent and was chasing the home health aides with a meat cleaver and throwing heavy objects like paperweights, ripping up precious photos. And eventually, at that point in the process, we couldn't handle her at home anymore. And we had to put her in a psych ward for 10 days only, thankfully. And that seemed to do the trick. The doctors found a medicine that calmed the violence without sedating her and putting her to sleep all day. And she never had another period like that. So
Wow.
we were very lucky, and I know not everybody has that. And I know some patients who go the opposite direction and get more angry or violent rather than less. So my story is not universal, but the principles I learned, I think, are universal.
Mm-hmm. Well, and once they get labeled kind of with that behavior, especially that kind of aggression, it can be hard even to find a placement for them that will take them. And like you said, you were lucky it was only 10 days and they were able to get her stabilized. What a gift, because people think, oh, they focus on the aggression, and it's like, but why are they aggressive? They're scared, they're terrified, they're protecting themselves. I mean, and so something's going on there that, we need to get a handle on, that, can trigger things. And when I see somebody really aggressive, I mean, granted, it can be fearful, but I really try to go to why. Why is that? And how do I calm them down so they don't feel so threatened? That's really, really important. And I loved your connection is everything. My focus is relationship based. I'm tired of person-centered care that nobody really knows what it means as far as families, and it's overused, but you kind of like, well, what are they delivering? Because I'm not seeing anything really different. And it has gotten so task oriented because all of our micromanaging, in the workforce and stuff. And so, when you said that right away, to me, it was connections over content, over kind of checking that list off and getting things done and making sure everybody's in the right box. And, we have to think maybe we weren't in the right box. Maybe they're leading the way here.
Have you worked directly with dementia patients?
Oh, yeah. My mom lived with it for 30 years. I now have a neighbor, a friend, and another relative that I'm actively involved in. Plus, I do a lot of support groups. My grandma supposedly had it, but I never saw that in the family. We just it was towards the end of her life. She had cancer and she was on morphine, and everyone just thought it was the morphine. But my mom was the only one that said that. And then I had a great aunt when I was 13 that just crushed my heart when she didn't recognize me. And back then I was just told, that's what happens when you get old, Lori. That's just the way it is,
Well, it's funny you say that, because my closest friends would very gingerly approach me or on the phone, but with this sense of being forlorn and a little nervous to ask me. And they would say, does your mom still know who you are? As if the answer was life or death. If I said no, it was devastating to them to consider. And yet if they said, does your mom still know who you are? I would think to myself, truthfully, I don't really know who I am, so why should I care that she doesn't? And it wasn't the worst thing in the world that I anticipated because, like I said, the love and the connection and the essence of our beings were still very much connected.
Yeah, I had that experience too. My mom started calling me her mom. And
Yeah.
and it didn't bother me at all. Never did. And then one day, my mom ended up later in life, ended up being in a nursing home, which she asked to go to because my dad fell down steps, and then he was dealing with cancer, but then he had traumatic brain injury, and then that was it. He couldn't live on his own. And so she asked to move in. And so one day I was walking in with my older brother, and he heard my mom go. She would be sitting with all of her little friends, and she would go, and there's my mother, and she takes such good care of me. And it would just melt my heart. And then there was one little gal that wasn't part of their clique, and she would yell out, and this happened every day, Dorothy, that's not your mother, that's your daughter. And then my mom would go, oh, I have Alzheimer's. And then her whole group would just cackle and laugh. And the other person would be just so mad that this wasn't a serious thing. And then my brother goes, doesn't that bother you? And I said, no, why do you ask? And he says, well, she calls me Chuck, which was her brother. And he says, that really bothers me. How could she not know who I am? I've been her child for 50 years. And he was just extremely offended. How dare she not know who he is? And I said, well, Mark, you got to realize mom's gone back in time before she was married, before she had kids. I mean, she's way back in time. And, if you look in the mirror, you look like Uncle Chuck. That's a compliment. She loved her brother, so try to frame it like that. And he goes, well, but you don't look anything like grandma. And I said, I know grandma was this skinny little thing and I'm not. And I said, but you have to go back at mom's life and look at it. I said, you have to remember mom and grandma never had a close relationship. My mom's dad had a massive heart attack when she was like 15. My grandma's story has it, had a nervous breakdown, and she took off and she traveled the world and she left my mom home alone. Now, you couldn't get by with that today, but that's what happened back then. And so my mom had some abandonment issues, though it really was never talked about. And I said, Mark, I just feel honored that somehow our relationship has healed her relationship with her mom.
Mm.
And to me, I think, how lucky am I to be part of that equation? Because I don't even know what the heck I did,
Well, you're unusual. The person who yelled out, what did she yell out?
Dorothy, that's not your mother. That's your daughter. Yeah.
That's, even though I didn't call it a principle, that actually is a fundamental principle to learn in caring for memory loss patients, whether it's Alzheimer's, Lewy body, vascular. There's a lot of different kinds. But it's just the number one thing. If you go to a support group with a leader who knows their stuff, they'll teach you never contradict their reality or their experience. Because for them, it's absolutely true and real. And your job is not to correct them and tell them what's really real. Your job is to go with their experience. And it can be very upsetting to the patient if their loved one, like my father, had a hard time learning this. Took him a couple years of yelling at her. The one I remember in particular was he was screaming, "Of course you have a sister. You just got off the phone with her 5 minutes ago." And then I walked in the room to see what's happening, and my mother grabbed me by the elbow, walked me on to the side and whispered, "I think there's something wrong with your father. He's been acting very crazy lately." Because in her eyes, he was the crazy one for
Yep.
insisting she had a sister when she knew
Yep.
she didn't at that moment.
Yeah. Yeah, it is really interesting. And they pick up on our behaviors. They pick up on all the things that we don't think about. I mean, they can tell our tone of voice and what that means, and the roll of the eyes, the snicker, the oh, all of those stuff. They're taking all of that in and thinking, what's wrong? But it's really about learning patience, which in all my support groups, that's what everybody asks for the most. And one of the best examples I have is my friend has just lost all orientation of time, just absolutely no concept of time. And we bought him a big clock with the day and date and year and time and the sun and the moon and the AM, PM, the whole 9 yards. And he knows the time, and he calls me every day and tells me what time it is, what day it is, if it's AM or PM, but he has no idea if that's morning or night. And he'll call sometimes at 3 o'clock and say, well, why don't you come on over and we'll go for happy hour or something. And I'm like, it's 3 a.m, Raj, and people go, why do you pick up the phone? And I said, because I know from like witnessing my mom that he will fret and he will call 10 other people because he's looking for a calmness and a groundedness. And yeah, it wakes me up, but I can go back to sleep because it doesn't bother me, thinking I'm glad I was able to help him out. I mean, that's just how I learned to frame those things. Or, dealing with another person that I love with medications, she just can't track that. No, we just took your insulin. I mean, literally, you just put it away and you're pulling it back out. And, she wants to start all over. And, it's breaking everything down, that step by step by step. It's kind of remembering, I know a lot of trainers use the peanut butter sandwich. Write down all the steps it takes you to make a peanut butter sandwich, because we just think we'll just make a peanut butter sandwich. But you got to walk over and get the bread, and you got to open the bread, and you have to get a knife and a plate and the peanut butter, the jelly. You got to spread it. You got to cut it. You got to put it all away. You got to twist the caps. And there's like 20 steps for most people to make a simple peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And we have to remember that doesn't work. It's just too many steps. It's one or two, as things progress. And in the beginning, I could give my mom multiple, steps.
Caring for someone with dementia is one of the toughest journeys, but you don't have to do it alone. I'm Allison Schreier, and my experience caring for my husband inspired me to create Zinnia, a therapeutic streaming service designed to support people living with dementia and reduce caregiver stress. Zinnia offers research-backed videos intentionally created for people with dementia, engaging, calming, and easy to follow. Whether you need to ease agitation, create moments of joy, or make daily routines smoother, Zinnia is here to help. Family and professional caregivers use our content to turn challenges into opportunities for connection. Accessible by subscription on mobile devices and connected TVs, Zinnia is simple to use whenever you need it. Because when caregiving feels easier, life feels better. Go to zinniatv.com and sign up for a free trial today. Use the code RESOURCE for 15% off an annual Zinnia subscription.
But then it became a point where I couldn't. And so do I keep shoving that down her throat, making her feel incompetent, irritating me? Neither of us is getting where we want to go. Or do I slow down, do it step by step? She's happy, I'm happy, and we get it done faster. And it doesn't wreck our day. I mean, when you step back and look at it like that, it's like, oh, well, that makes a lot of sense. Because so often when we push, it takes us longer and we both get upset.
Frustrated,
yeah.
Well, when my mother, one of the things that happens to a lot of Alzheimer's patients for some reason is they're often at home and this was, I said, my childhood home, and they had been married close to 70 years when my dad passed. But she would suddenly get in a kind of anxious tizzy about, I want to go home. And my father's tendency would be, you are home. This is your home. But I would enter the room and I would just take my mom gently by the arm and I said, Ma, come with me. I'll walk you home. And just like how a baby switches from screaming bloody murder to getting distracted and laughing, I would take my mother into the hallway, and there was a picture of her family from Germany going back a few generations, and she would stop and be fascinated and point to each person. And by that time, this whole idea of I need to go home had disappeared. So they call that redirecting.
Yeah, real simply. I mean, and it's not like you have to go through a ton of training to do this. It's reminding yourself that there are other ways to do this, and that we've done this all our life in different situations, like you say, with our kids as they grow up. And we've done it with our partners. Some people call it manipulation. Other people, it's a redirection. It can be a reminiscence. It can be an activity. And, some of it is just not getting upset. And, when they ask to go to the doctor over and over, instead of correcting them, go, yeah, you're right. We're going to go later. And it doesn't have to be today. It might be a month out, but you just aren't going to argue with it, and they'll let it go for a while, and they might ask you again. And, you learn over time. I think, anyways, I did, not to tell them so far in advance, because there's no timeline for them, right. And we just went through that with my friend with the dentist appointment. Another friend made an appointment for him, and he got in early. It was within a week and a half. But to him, he's like, damn it, I think I'm just going to cancel. This is ridiculous that I have to wait this long, and he doesn't understand. Most dentists, you're out a few months. He's actually getting in quickly, but his mind, it was such an important appointment to him. He couldn't really focus on anything else because he didn't want to miss it. And all of us were like, no, we got this down. Jan's going to call you ahead of time. We all knew. And so every time he'd call us, we would kind of reassure him. And then he would always like, thanks for picking up the phone and just reassuring me. He's like, okay, I'll let it go. He's like, I'll probably call you again later because I'll forget. But thanks for now, and that's just kind of how we've maintained our friendship, and we've done it kind of as a tribe. We're trying to work together with stuff like that. And but it's a learning curve, and not everyone.
And the learning curve is much harder. I noticed. I mean, obviously, after 65 years of marriage, where you have habitual ways of being and talking and private jokes and all that stuff, much harder for my dad to let go of that partner and see her in a new light than it was for me. So it took him a couple of years to get with the program, and those were suffering years for him. And then when he started having dementia, he was very similar to what you were just speaking of. We bought him a big calendar, and each day we would check off what, that this was Monday, and tomorrow, he looked at it once and he said, "El, when is my dentist appointment tomorrow?" And I said, 2:30, Dad. He goes, "Well, I can call in the morning and double check." I said, "No, you don't have to double check because I made the appointment for you and I wrote it down right here in the calendar. You can read it." He goes, "Okay, but it wouldn't hurt to check." And I said, "Why don't you just check with me?" So he goes, "You? Well, that's a good idea." We're in the same room about 5 feet apart. Picks up his cell phone. I'm on speed dial. And then I answer the phone 4 feet away, and he goes, "El, when is my dentist appointment tomorrow?" And I go, 2:30, Dad. He goes, "Huh, okay." He hangs up, looks at me, and goes, "You were right."
Yeah, and you have to laugh. at the simplicity of things like that instead of getting angry about it. And I look at it and I go, well, how cute is that? It's like in whatever mode gets them to comfort, I'm in, as long as it's not hurting anybody else. And for me, and I don't know about you, but for me, some of those memories are like my fondest memories because they're not the everyday memory, and it just shows how connected you were, that you understood that need. Because to me, it doesn't bring back a frustration, it brings back a calmness, and even him thanking you, I guess you were right. you know and it shows your ability to be creative in this situation and not take offense, where like so many people think they're pushing my buttons. It's like, no, they don't know how to push the buttons anymore. We're past that. But I was going to ask you about your dad and patterns, because again, 70 years of marriage, that's a long time. I mean, people struggle after 15, 20 years, but 70, talk about ingrained. I mean, you just probably walk through your life and your routine in a total sleep. Like sometimes you can drive your car and go, I don't know how I got here, but my car made it here, type deal, because it's just so automatic. And that has to be crushing, because I think people don't realize the little things that they miss.
Right.
Somebody finishing a sentence the way they used to, or knowing their favorite food, or grabbing something as they're leaving the house because they know you're going to forget it. I mean, just all of those little pieces are, what hold us together, and we don't acknowledge those many times over the years.
And you can't make the leap in a day. You can't just say, okay, she's gone, here's a new person. But over time, you start to accept that the person, you still want her to be the person she was, but that's not going to happen. And if you slowly, gently can start to let go, then you suddenly notice, wow, there's a brand new person here. How interesting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I want to get inside this person's experience and see how she sees the world. And so it can be a gift.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. And like you said, there's new experiences. It's kind of, to me, it's kind of like that detour of life. We have things all planned out. And especially for, people like myself who are older, you have plans of what retirement's going to look like, and who you're going to be with, and where you're going to go. And most people don't hit everything on their bucket list, and many don't even get a start, when this hits. But it's kind of like going for a drive, and there's a detour in the road, and I get all mad and I'm going to be late, and why is this? And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I didn't know that was there. That's kind of cool. I'll have to stop in there another time. And you notice other things, and you can choose to notice other things and appreciate it, or you can continue to be mad. And I think that's the part where people forget they really have a choice on this journey of what are their reactions going to be, because they're the only ones that can choose their reactions. And a person with dementia really can't make those choices. It really does get down to that safety and connections, and how are we making somebody feel. And so to me, that's always the goal. One of your chapters is called The Happiness in Memory Loss. And I'm sure people go, what are you talking about? Come on. How can that be?
Well, like I said, for my mom, she was haunted, and so was I, because it passes through the generations
Mm-hmm.
by her experiences in Nazi Germany. And I realized the happiness of memory loss one day when I was helping her put a jacket on, and when her
Mm-hmm.
arm came through the sleeve, it was in the Sieg Heil position. And and she actually said, as she did that, she said, Heil Hitler.
Mm-hmm.
And she would never have uttered his name my entire life, let alone make a joke about it. And I
Mm-hmm.
realized a big chunk of her burden had disappeared and lifted. And that was remarkable.
Oh,
And
that had to have been that.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, and I think too, I mean, so the trauma is released of what she went through, but I also think the ego is released. And so the right and wrong, the being paranoid, like most of us are, of what someone else going to think, like when we go out in public, is somebody judging me? Are they watching? No, I don't want to. I don't want to try painting because I was told when I was younger I'm no good at that. So I'm just
Right.
going to leave that be. They'll go in and they'll just try it and they'll do it and they'll do wonderfully because they're not like looking over their shoulder anymore, trying to be the perfect person that they think they're supposed to be, that others have kind of put on them through their lives. And
And
that's
my dad projected that onto her for the first few years, where he was trying to hide the fact that she had Alzheimer's, like it was something to be ashamed of. And he, everybody, if you met her for 5 minutes or less,
Mhm.
1 minute, you would know something was off because of the nonsensical things she would say.
Sure.
And and so my dad didn't quite see. He was trying to protect her from the neighbors and afraid to go out. He didn't want anybody to know this, but eventually he had no choice. It was just beyond obvious.
Well, and I think some of that too, and I think I did this. I said, well, I'm trying to protect her, but I think some of it unknowingly and unconsciously was I was trying to protect myself. From is it the embarrassment because no one tells you how to deal with this? You don't know if anyone's going to accept it. You've just seen other people react to other people that are dealing with this. And, we're not a real compassionate community, and we need a lot of work in that area to be more empathetic and stuff. So, once I kind of got over that not telling, because what I found, and I don't know if you found this or if you did this, but we didn't really tell their friends. And then I remember getting really mad at their friends one time because they wanted them to go travel in the winter because we live in Minnesota and go down to Texas or something. And I thought, why did you lay that out? Now they're both coming home and they're all excited. They couldn't pack a suitcase, let alone maneuver, an airport or anything down there. And then I had to really look inward and go, well, Laurie, you're going over to meet with them, make sure they're groomed, make sure dad has money, everything looks okay. And then they go out with their friends and they reminisce, which they can both do.
Right.
So, it's like, hello. And the one day when things kind of hit the fan with their friends was, and I'll never forget this. And again, they didn't know how to deal with it. But, and this was very unusual with my dad because it was really my mom that had the dementia. My dad had brain cancer and we didn't see much affecting his brain. But they went to go to a funeral and the friends came to pick him up. And my dad has this beautiful suit on with no shirt. He has like a beater underwear shirt underneath it. And they took him to the funeral. And so my dad and his friends, I mean, they all had a good sense of humor and stuff. And someone's like, Dean, what's up with the outfit? And he's like, I'm a trendsetter. You haven't seen this in the magazines. I mean, that was his recovery for that, and I was thankful that that he wasn't embarrassed. I mean, he didn't show that to me. He didn't say anything. It was just kind of a joke, but he didn't really realize the level of why people were asking that question. And I was thankful for that. But again, people had they didn't like, just let's go get a shirt out of your closet. No one thought of that.
My dad once, there was an argument with mom because they were going out to dinner with friends,
Mm-hmm.
and she got dressed and had her bra on the outside of her shirt. And she really got annoyed with him because he was not going to go to a restaurant with her
Mm-hmm.
wearing her bra like that. So that was a tough one.
Well, and that's very common that people will put their clothes on, like if you lay them out, whatever order they're in, they'll put them on. they know they're supposed to go on, but they don't know the order. So Lori Shear has been living with dementia quite a while, and she participates in my dementia chats. And she said, every night, she says, when I do laundry and everything, I put everything on one hanger. And I put it on the hanger in the order I put it on. So my bra and underwear and socks are on the top. Then it's, my pants, my shirt, my blazer or sweater if I'm wearing that. But she says everything has to be in order. She says, otherwise I'll screw it up.
Well, she's with it enough to come up with that strategy. Sorry for the shaking.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting to see younger onsets do that. She also did something with her bed linens where she would, she still wanted to like make her bed, and change the sheets, but she couldn't figure out which way the sheets went. So she sewed tags on the header and footer ends. So she knew which way that was with tags, and she could put it on and not be frustrated by trying to put it on sideways and things like that. And I thought, how smart. When she went grocery shopping, she started doing bags just with cold foods in it. So then she knew when they got home, that had to be put away. The rest could wait. And so her and Roy would, work that route and stuff.
It's amazing how self-aware she was.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's must be a much earlier stage.
Yeah, it was earlier on, but like little things that would throw her for a loop. She said, every night it would be her routine to lock up the house, turn off the lights, but they had some double switches, and so that would throw her for a loop. So Roy goes through first, gets them in the right position so she can turn them all down, because if they're up, it just threw her off, Right. And so. Again, a lot of times people don't talk about those things early on because they're trying to hide them. But when you talk them through, a lot of times you can come up with some solutions that work really, really well. And the whole world doesn't need to know about them, but you're going to be more comfortable and more confident. And then I think it's easier to realize that you can adapt to a lot of things. Many of my people with dementia are still... They've been living with it 10 to 20 years, and they're still doing Zooms with me. And people are shocked by that,
Your friend Lori's diametrically opposite to how my mom was, which was complete denial from beginning to end. I mean, there was a moment when I had been sitting in a park with her and my wife, Shari, sitting on a bench watching this beautiful big white egret just peacefully floating there. And then we went home, and literally within 5 minutes, she came up to me in the house and said, "Did I tell you I saw an egret today?" And this is at the very beginning, so I didn't yet know to go with her world. And I made the classic mistake of, "Mom, don't you remember I was with you? Shari and I were sitting on the bench," and I could literally see anxiety. I was creating anxiety in her, and I'm glad I caught it, because then I stopped. But then a few days later, she got lost in the car coming home from a shopping mall that she had been to 2 to 3 times a week for 50 years, 5 minutes from her house, and she got lost. And I said, "Ma, maybe we should get you checked out." And she screamed, "It was dark out. You would have gotten lost too." And that was the final. I realized, okay, this is not my job to convince her of something that she'd prefer not to speak of. And then she kind of at some point slipped over that line. There's always a line. And on the other side of the line, you don't have any real self-awareness, some people, of what's going on and what's happened to you, because you're now, in some cases, enjoying the moment more than you ever did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, very, very true. It's a fascinating disease when you open up your mind to really try to understand it. But they always say step into their world, with that. Why don't you tell us a little bit about, expand a little bit more on your book and what people can expect to find inside it?
Well, I realized as I was writing it that a lot of people might think they can't relate to it because we had the financial wherewithal to be able to keep both my parents at home for years until the end. They both died at home with their loved ones around them, and we had the financial wherewithal to have full-time aides. First, it was just for my mother, about 7 or 8 people coming in at different hours, different days. And then when my dad lost his mind to some extent, he needed a full-time aide, live-in. And then when he died, my mother needed a full-time live-in. So I was aware that our circumstances in some way were more privileged than someone who's got to keep working their job, scramble to get someone to babysit their parent, and
Mm-hmm.
then come home and pick up the work themselves and do the feeding and the changing, and much harder. But however, the fundamental principles that I bring forward in my story, I think, are universal. Connection to your loved one is universal, not not contradicting them and trying to convince them that they're wrong and that your reality is the right one. That's a
Mm-hmm.
universal thing, whether they're at home or in a facility. So my hope was, I actually, there were so many funny events. We haven't gotten to any of that, but my hope was by focusing without sugarcoating the bad parts, because I didn't want it to seem like Pollyanna, but
Mm-hmm.
to also focus on the many sweet, loving, heart opening, and for me, healing moments based on my mother's condition that we also experienced. And so I called it the silver lining of Alzheimer's. And anybody, regardless of the financial circumstances, can work with themselves to start to open to new possibilities and not only see it as a glass half empty,
Mm-hmm.
with melancholy, and it's just going to be worse and worse till the end. You can find a way to see where it can be joyful, and it takes time. It takes an adjustment. It's not an overnight trick.
Ain't that the truth? Well, you said you have some joyful moments and things in the book. Can you share a couple of those where, because I know I have lots of funny things that happen, but and there's funny things that happen in my life before dementia. And just because you have dementia doesn't mean that's going to stop. Weird stuff's going to happen. That's just, to me, anyways, in my life, that's just how my life runs, and I've found that laughter is a great healer as
Yeah.
well. And it's a wonderful connector. I mean, I love all of my friends, I just love laughing with them, or out in public, I see something, I don't want to laugh at somebody, but in a situation where, it's just like, okay, that happened, and you move on, but it makes my day, it lifts my spirits. And again, not in a mean, condescending way, but I think so often people think, well, you can't laugh, this is serious,
Right.
and it's just like, oh my gosh, you're not going to last long doing this if you can't laugh. I mean, but that's me.
Well, I'm just trying to remember some. One was, we're sitting at the kitchen table, and my mother took a piece of lettuce out of the salad that was in a bowl, and she stretched it a little bit gently, smoothed it out, put it on the table, smoothed it out some more, and then looked up at us and pointed to the lettuce and goes, "This is not a normal person."
Caring for someone with dementia is one of the toughest journeys, but you don't have to do it alone. I'm Allison Schreier, and my experience caring for my husband inspired me to create Zinnia, a therapeutic streaming service designed to support people living with dementia and reduce caregiver stress. Zinnia offers research-backed videos intentionally created for people with dementia, engaging, calming, and easy to follow. Whether you need to ease agitation, create moments of joy, or make daily routines smoother, Zinnia is here to help. Family and professional caregivers use our content to turn challenges into opportunities for connection. Accessible by subscription on mobile devices and connected TVs, Zinnia is simple to use whenever you need it. Because when caregiving feels easier, life feels better. Go to zinniatv.com and sign up for a free trial today. Use the code RESOURCE for 15% off an annual Zinnia subscription.
And I told that story to a friend of mine. He goes, well, in a way, she was right. It wasn't normal. Another time a lot of these happened at the kitchen table. She picked up her glass of apple juice, and she was studying it like a scientist, like holding it up to the light, turning it around, picked up a fork and made different sounds by tapping it. And once her study was complete, she put the apple juice down and looked up at us and said, I wonder what size brassiere it wears. Just these outrageous comments. And the phone rang. We're at the kitchen table again. She picks it up, and we hear her say, everything's fine. We're here selling all the chickens. And then when she got off the phone, we didn't know who it was. We said, Mom, who was that? What were you talking about? She goes, oh, it was just all about the pillows and the teeth. And that was the end of it. We would just accept it. And hopefully the person on the other end of the phone would call back at some point.
Yeah. And sometimes it's actually the words, they're just picking the wrong words, for their sentences. And when there's a lot of wrong words, it's really hard to figure out. Other times you can figure it out from the rhythm of what they're saying in the conversation. But sometimes it's just like, no, not at all with things like that. I know I've had many people say that their parents have little, they call them like momisms and stuff, and just certain phrases that they repeat all the time that don't mean anything, but either make them really happy, or it's just kind of, it's almost like that routine joke that somebody says over and over and over, and you laugh every time, even though you've heard it 100 times, maybe even that day. Right. But they laugh because it just reminds them of their mom. It's a loving thing. And I think a lot of outsiders think, you're laughing at them. And it's for 99% of the population, that's not what it is. It's those small things.
It's a shared laughter.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this has just been so interesting. I'm just going to do a shout out. I love giving a shout out to my webmaster. I hear so many people struggle with trying to find a good webmaster, and I use Q for Good, and they are fabulous. They're affordable, and most important to me, they talk my language. I don't like the black hole or the blue screen, and I don't want to go that deep. I'll only go so far, but they can dumb it down for me without me feeling dumb. And then they hop right on it and get things fixed. So
what's the name of the company?
Q for Good. And I have a little ad for them right on my website, and you can get 10% off. Just to mention my name, and they'll give you a quote. But they are, I wouldn't normally say lovely to work with for a webmaster, because I've used a lot of them in my years, and they're like nobody I've ever worked with before. They really are absolutely fabulous. So,
well, then can I give a shout out to the website where you can find my book? It's called Elemi, ELEMI, elemipress.com. And if you go to it, it's a beautiful site, but if you go to it, you can download an ebook for $7.99, or if you want the physical paperback, you press the button and it takes you to Amazon, where it's $21.95. So it depends. I like the paperback. It's filled with pictures of my family, and in all stages, from when they got married to now. So elemipress.com. I wanted to say one more thing about the cadence of conversation. Do we have time?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Because I still actually had a couple other questions I wanted to ask you. So,
okay.
Yeah.
As you know, my mother entered the stage of word salad,
Mm-hmm.
where it's like you pick a bunch of words out of a dictionary, cut them up, and throw them in a salad spinner.
Yeah.
You get a salad, and then you pick them out and say them in complete normal English tone and cadences, but it makes absolutely no sense. And we had long conversations like this, you know. Well, the Mindel man is not coming today, but I'll have to ask her about the pears. And I need to get rid of the Vindermint. And I would say, Ma, you're getting rid of the Vindermint? I did too. She goes, you did? Well, then the Faluternutton is never going to show up. You know, we would talk for 15 minutes like this. So it was fun.
It is fascinating though. They don't skip a beat, like you say in the cadence. You know, it's not like they're thinking of the word and there's a pause. It just comes out. I love that you played with her with that. You validated her, and again, not about right or wrong. It was about the engagement. And I would imagine you're picking up on the glint in her eye and the smirk and just the eye contact and the body language and stuff that, well, yeah, if that's not going to work, then, well, that's never going to happen, and it's all, and you can see it's all making sense in her head, though you don't have a clue what it is you're talking about. And just that sense of belonging and being understood and being able to give that gift to her instead of, Mom, I don't even know what a Vinderman is. I don't, and I don't know how it's going to affect that and why they're not going to show up. What are you talking about? And trying to force somebody to explain something that they can't. They're doing the best job that they can. The only hints that I've heard over the years is when someone gets a little jarbled is you can try to ask questions, but again, it's going to depend on their progression of the disease and where they're at, is saying, what does a Vindermint look like? What color is it? What does that feel like? I forgot, and then sometimes you can get some clues is like, oh, they want a pickle, or whatever the heck it is, because you couldn't figure it out at all.
We had an incident with my dad like that where he said, come on, we have to go take care of the fish.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have fish. They didn't have fish. And it took some back and forth before we realized he wanted to brush his teeth because he had some tuna fish from lunch in his teeth. So it made sense.
Yeah, but makes perfect sense. Yeah. Oh, that's too funny. Yeah, because right away you're going to a fish tank. Like, yeah, right. What are we looking for here? Well, that's perfect, because one of the questions I wanted to ask you was about reframing situations, and it sounds like you've really tackled that beautifully with not getting frustrated and angry, but stepping in and kind of playing the game. And I know some people go, well, it's not a game, and it's like, to me, working with my mom and stepping into those moments made me as an adult more playful. And I think I got really serious as I aged, and there's a right way and there's a wrong way to get this done, 20 times faster. And so I'll just do it and blah, blah, blah. And she made me just kind of breathe and go with it. And what a gift, because boy, that lets go of a lot of stress.
Caring for someone with dementia is one of the toughest journeys, but you don't have to do it alone. I'm Allison Schreier, and my experience caring for my husband inspired me to create Zinnia, a therapeutic streaming service designed to support people living with dementia and reduce caregiver stress. Zinnia offers research-backed videos intentionally created for people with dementia, engaging, calming, and easy to follow. Whether you need to ease agitation, create moments of joy, or make daily routines smoother, Zinnia is here to help. Family and professional caregivers use our content to turn challenges into opportunities for connection. Accessible by subscription on mobile devices and connected TVs, Zinnia is simple to use whenever you need it. Because when caregiving feels easier, life feels better. Go to zinniatv.com and sign up for a free trial today. Use the code RESOURCE for 15% off an annual Zinnia subscription.
Versus going down the other road.
Yeah, it's kind of almost like a left brain, right brain thing. My
Mhm.
father was a mathematician who published 60 textbooks translated into multiple languages. So math, one and one plus two, one and one always equals two. In my mother's world, who knows? One and one could equal a bologna sandwich.
Mhm.
So yeah, it takes someone like my dad a real transformation to enter the world of play.
Mhm.
Whereas someone like me, who's been an artist and dancer and uh, right right brain type of capacities, we made up stuff, games with my mother that were hilarious. Like I don't
Mhm.
know if you read the part in the book about tangerine poker. I don't know if you remember that, but
I don't remember that one offhand, so why don't you tell us?
well, my beautiful niece, who's about 33 at the time, and I and my mother sat down with a deck of cards.
Mhm.
Nobody said what game we were playing.
Mhm.
Nobody knew what the rules were. I dealt everybody 7 cards, and we're all studying our hands. I went first, and I just put down 3 of hearts, and then I moved. There was a tangerine on the table, and then I moved the tangerine and set it next to the salt shaker. And then my niece went, and she picked up my 3 of hearts and put down, a king of clubs and a 4 of diamonds facing up,
Mhm.
and took the salt shaker and sprinkled a little salt on the tangerine. And my father's looking over our shoulder, baffled, because he was always struggling to find activities to do with mom. And he figured, oh, mom's really engaged with this game, and he wanted to learn how to play. And he said, "Can someone tell me the rules?" I said, "Well, that's the fun part, Dad. There are no rules." And then it's my mother's turn. She's studying her hands so closely, like really thinking about the best move. And finally, she picked up what was on the top of the pile, put down 2 unrelated cards, picked up the tangerine, peeled it, and started to eat it. And we all were just giggling and laughing. And my father was just baffled.
Yep. Game
So
over. She won. Yeah.
you have to relearn how to play like a child.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, it reminds me with one of my granddaughters always likes to win, and so she's always changing the rules when we play cards.
Right,
We'll be in,
right,
and she's like, "No, no, no, we're not doing it that way."
right.
And I said, "Oh, in this moment," I said, "Then going forward, then we're going," and so it's kind of funny with her on that. But what a beautiful way to just go with the flow. It doesn't life doesn't always have to make sense. It doesn't have to be trackable, and productive. I mean, it's just about that connecting and that relationship and that comfort and safety, and then that humor, just that to be able to breathe where you just everything is acceptable. And we don't live in a world where everything is acceptable at all. There's a lot of judgment, and that is so freeing. That was one of the gifts, I think, with my own mom. As the disease progressed, someone asked me, "Well, how did you deal with things?" Because I'm sure you relied on your mom for, feedback and stuff over the years. And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, she was always counsel to me, and I could go whine, and she would help me sort out a problem or whatever." And and I said, "Well, it got to the point where she couldn't give me words back, but I could still explain what I was going through, and I could still get her comfort. I could still receive
Mhm.
comfort and guidance of just, being peaceful, and don't wig out because you're adding to your frustration, and it'll come to you. I do believe our answers are within if we just let them come out, and just because it's not how I would play cards with 7 cards in my hand doesn't mean you can't throw an orange and some salt into the mix.
Right,
And I think that's pretty cool, and to be able to teach that to, what was it, your niece or something you said was playing with you as
right.
well. I think that's great exposure to be able to see that. So wonderful, wonderful story there. It's just, and again, we have our good days and our bad days. I'm sure you weren't consistent on being, freewheeling the whole time. I'm sure you had your moments where you would get frustrated. That's pretty common with people, but that doesn't mean you can't get back on track. It does get easier over time, for sure, though.
Yeah, it was that what you just said was a lot more true of
Mm-hmm.
my dad because he's the one with 65 years of habits and
Mm-hmm.
ways of being. And so it was a longer journey for him to get over that hump, let his wife that he knew go and start to enjoy, instead of fighting with, start to enjoy this woman who was still beautiful. I mean, my
Mm-hmm.
mom in her 90s still had no wrinkles. She
Mm-hmm.
always looked 15 years younger. And so, yeah, it was nice to see. They wound
Mm-hmm.
up, sometimes dancing in the living room, ballroom dancing. And we would sing a lot, which none of this had happened while I was growing up.
Mm-hmm.
We were singing and dancing, and yeah,
Well, and music is so powerful, and so is touch. As we
especially,
age, we don't touch as much as, when we're younger. And so people crave that. So I had one friend where I think it was the wife had dementia and the father had lost his eyesight. And so one was the brains and one was the eyes for the team. But he said every morning my parents got up and danced, and every night before they went to sleep, they danced. There was just this closeness, this intimate um, thing that they did together that was very calming. And what a great way to start out your day and end your day,
yeah,
with something so simple that doesn't cost a lot of money. It's just building it in and learning to figure out, what do you like, what brings you joy, what brings you peace, and then for both of you, duplicate that. It doesn't always have to be about how does it make them feel. It's about how does it make both of you feel in this journey. And I think once we get back to being in a relationship where it is important to take in both sides of the feeling matter, then you can really start focusing on, well, what's going to work for us, because all of our relationships are a little bit different, and then sharing that information with other people. So I know for us, when my mom was in the nursing home, we started, because a lot of people didn't want to visit because they don't know what to do.
yeah. And going back to what you said before, my dad actually started resenting some of their old friends who
Mhm.
just wouldn't visit. And it's because they weren't able to deal with seeing my mom or knowing what to do or how to be with her. But it hurt my dad's feelings because these were lifelong friends.
Oh yeah, that happens a ton out there. And part of it is because we don't share the journey. And some people don't want to be part of that journey, because they're so uncomfortable with their feelings. My mom actually and dad had a friend who would not go see my mom in the nursing home. My mom lived in the nursing home 14 years, which was highly unusual. And Kay could never go visit her, just couldn't. And then when I showed her a picture one time that I was really proud of, that was with myself and a musician, and who came to sing with my mom, and I met her in this restaurant. I slide this DVD over to her so that she can see this, and it's got a picture of the three of us on the cover. And this woman who was in her 70s screamed out in the restaurant, "She looks horrible. You've been telling me you're taking care of her, God, all this time. Look at her. It doesn't even look." And she's just going off. And I couldn't figure out why. I mean, yeah, I know my mom's changed, but I see her, and her teeth are chipped, and, she, has a billy goat hair every now and then on her chin or something like that. But, and she didn't go to the beauty shop anymore because that was uncomfortable for her. She didn't like the feel, and she didn't understand what somebody was putting rollers in her head and what that smell was from a perm. I mean, so many things had changed. And this woman was just so upset, and I kind of gave a nervous giggle. And then I looked at her and I said, thank you, Kay. And then she went off on me even more. What are you talking about? What are you thanking me for? Blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, Kay, I didn't know till this moment you don't see what I see. I mean, I just assumed that she saw the joy, but she
Right.
focused on my mom's chipped teeth, which we weren't going to pull and get her dentures because those dentures wouldn't have ended up in her mouth. They would have ended up in someone else's or a drawer or who knows where, because
Right.
it wouldn't have worked. Um, and so then I pointed out, and she's like, what joy? And I said, Kay, look at the big smile. Look at her dimples. Look at when we laugh in our family, we kind of lose our eyes, but you can still get a little glint in there. I said, Kay, this is what pure joy looks like. I look at the picture, I hear my mom giggle. It just triggers. I can vividly hear my mom giggle. This is pure joy. Doesn't look, it's not all packaged anymore, but it's still there.
So then you, of all people, must have related to my general concept for the book of seeing the joy, seeing where, in my case, my heart opened. I was mad at my mother like a teenager most of my life, and I didn't have to work. I did work to try to loosen that up, therapy and this and that, but then it just was effortless when she became this angel of light. One
Yep.
time, my mother was very, like I mentioned earlier, it was us and them.
Mm-hmm.
Our immediate family was safe, maybe her sister and extended family, but everybody else was them. And she
Mm-hmm.
was on edge. And one time we took her out to dinner and it was time to leave. And this probably wasn't the right way to leave a restaurant. My father, brother, and I went out the door first, just assuming she was following. And then we get out on the sidewalk and go, where's mom? So we looked through the picture window of the restaurant, and she, who had stranger danger,
Mm-hmm.
was going table to table, striking up conversations with every other patron in the restaurant, unheard of during her lifetime. And she was enjoying all of them, giving them a boost in their meal, funny moments. It was
What a
pretty amazing.
gift.
Yeah.
To be able to frame that, where I think so many people go, oh, I'm embarrassed, mom, get over here, and, that's not socially acceptable. And I had somebody who was saying that their mom would do the same thing when they'd go out and she'd see a baby and she was like, vroom! She was all over that baby and, oh, your baby's so gorgeous and da, 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 da. And he was talking about how uncomfortable that was at first, because it's like, oh,
For him.
are they going to, yep, are they going to get mad? And I'm like, most people enjoy compliments, and that's exactly, she was telling them how beautiful the baby was. And he definitely learned that over time, but that's just kind of an immediate response. That's what we've been taught, how we are supposed to be. And to think that all these years that's been trapped, and she's got this beautiful release to be able to experience that. That's beautiful.
So your mom is still with us?
No, my mom's been gone for about 10 years, a little over 10 years now. So, but yeah, and I think so often many of them have special connections to kids and stuff too. And, they want,
they bring kids into memory units.
Mhm.
It seems to be a useful connection for both of them.
Well, I think because kids don't judge, they just want to play.
Yeah.
And so they just step right in and don't even see, they don't even consider anything's wrong. They just want, a play partner, and they just move on. And so that's a pretty cool thing, because as we get older, we get more judgmental, we have more biases, our schedules are tight, we have all of those things kind of hanging over us. And like I said, with my mom, she really taught me to turn off your phone when you visit, get rid of your pager. It's all going to be there afterwards, and that was hard for me to do in my job, because I was kind of 24/7. And it was like everything still remained the same. It was all there waiting for me to fix it or answer it or do whatever. And no one seemed to mind but me, really. I think in today's world, it's a little different where people, anticipate that you're going to just pick up the call and fix something. You're the only person that they have to deal with. More so than it was 10, 20 years ago. But again, part of that is on us on how do we set ourselves up? Are we going to be available 24/7 for everyone else's needs? Or are we going to say, you know what, I need a little time for myself too? So yeah.
What job required you to be 24/7?
Well, it wasn't quite 24/7, but I sold real estate. And I mean, there were a lot of times we were negotiating deals at 2 a.m, trying to, with multiple offers, you're out there and up early and, everyone thinks you're self-employed, but you're really at everyone else's whim. But I enjoyed it. It was fun. I did it for 25 years and then it was actually, through a lot of my education through real estate, where I would work with senior communities and do speaking. They were the ones that suggested I step into this because I had a different approach back in 2009 from what anyone really knew.
Caring for someone with dementia is one of the toughest journeys, but you don't have to do it alone. I'm Allison Schreier, and my experience caring for my husband inspired me to create Zinnia, a therapeutic streaming service designed to support people living with dementia and reduce caregiver stress. Zinnia offers research-backed videos intentionally created for people with dementia, engaging, calming, and easy to follow. Whether you need to ease agitation, create moments of joy, or make daily routines smoother, Zinnia is here to help. Family and professional caregivers use our content to turn challenges into opportunities for connection. Accessible by subscription on mobile devices and connected TVs, Zinnia is simple to use whenever you need it. Because when caregiving feels easier, life feels better. Go to zinniatv.com and sign up for a free trial today. Use the code RESOURCE for 15% off an annual Zinnia subscription.
And again, and part of that is there were other people like me out there, but people they weren't connected. They didn't know. And they still to this day don't know all the wonderful resources, from books to programs to, memory cafes. I mean, there's just so much out there that people aren't aware of. And it's expanding every day. So having conversations like this in terms of changing mindset to heart set and giving living examples that everybody can relate to. If they haven't gone through that exact same thing, they've gone through something pretty dang similar, but they couldn't dare tell their friends because they can't relate, or even family members who aren't always around, when, mom's fine. What are you talking about? They got kind of that attitude. So, yeah, you got all of those types of things in there. So I think it just takes a tribe of us to help kind of push the culture change through. So I really appreciate your time with us today. Do you want to, again, give people your contact information? I know you got a couple different websites, and I think you're on Facebook as well.
Yeah. Well, Facebook, you just search. My name is hard for people. It's Eliezer Sobel, and Eliezer. So if you search on Facebook for Eliezer Sobel, but it's not I don't have like an author page. I'm just another person on Facebook. For this book, you go to elemipress.com, ELEMI, one word, Elemi Press. And for the rest of my life, because I've also done a lot of painting and music and theater, and you go to just eliezesobel.com. So that's once you get the name.
For our listeners, we'll also have all of that contact information in the show notes as well. There's so many things that I think we learned through our dementia journey that we can apply in all of life in terms of being more compassionate, more empathetic, and also doing more advocacy. If we don't speak up and tell people the true story of what the needs are, we're never going to get the help and the support we need. It's just not going to happen. They're not mind readers out there. So in gathering again together as a tribe makes us stronger in that messaging. So
we discovered that we had to advocate for both mom and dad when they were hospitalized various times, almost 24/7, because the staff was not there for them.
mhm,
My brother once, my dad had been, the sheets were soiled and his pajamas, and he needed to be cleaned up and changed. And we had requested it, and requested. Finally, my brother, who's a PhD in psychology, but he can be called Dr. Sobel, he used that and went up to the head nurse at the charging station and said, "Can we get someone into my dad's room to clean him up?"
mhm,
And she said, "What's his name?" "Max Sobel." She looks in the computer. She goes, "I'm sorry, there's no Max Sobel registered on this floor." And
mhm,
my brother goes, "Well, he's 3 doors down against the window, 26B or whatever."
mhm.
And she checks again. She goes, "Nope, he's not here." And my brother goes, "Boy, that guy sure looks like my father." And then he couldn't believe it was like Kafka. He just went back to my dad's room, picked up the phone, called the attending physician who we had never met, and said, "This is Dr. Sobel. Can you please get an aide to come into room 26B ASAP? And also, we'd like a container of oxygen." And the guy just said, "Absolutely, Dr. Sobel." And we got everything done in 15 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, and at the psych ward, we walked in one day, and on the blackboard, it listed the patient's names and the name of the nurse
Mhm,
so it said Manya Sobel, my mother, and then it said, "Your nurse today is Jackie." So
mhm.
we were with her from 8 in the morning till 10 at night. One of us was always there. We never met Jackie,
Oh my
never met
gosh.
her. So, and I felt so bad looking around because so many of the patients had no one advocating for them or visiting them even. And it was sad. It was sad.
It's and you really do need somebody with you. I mean, just even going to the clinics and stuff, but and you're thinking all the charges that are being, paid for this care. And I mean, if you're on if you're in any room, a psych ward or not, I mean, minimum is every couple hours they're supposed to come in and check on you, and it's just, yeah, I don't get me started.
Yeah.
I think I got pulled back in with my neighbor, my friend, and a relative again, just to refresh my memory how messed up our systems are.
And
And
these were good metropolitan area
mhm,
hospitals, you know.
yeah, it doesn't make any difference. It happens all over, and you have to be on top. And even when you are, sometimes you're not, because there's nobody at the other side that you can connect with, and you can't give up. And I know it's hard. I mean, I just had a recent incident in December with a relative who was admitted to the hospital, who's type 1 diabetic, in the emergency room, and we couldn't visit because of COVID and stuff. They didn't want us there, and they knew she had dementia. They gave her no insulin and no food for 24 hours, and they let her walk out at a 499 reading, which was way too high, and her blood pressure was like 197 over something, and they said she's fine. And it's like, no, she's not fine, and just said, well, there's nothing we could do for her. And it was a situation where she had gotten aggressive, and that's why she was in there. And it's just, you got to be all over it. And I have to admit, I did not file a complaint because there were too many other parts. Her husband was in the hospital at the same time, so you're just juggling so many things. But it was just like atrocious that could even happen,
Right.
but stuff like that does, and you gotta take it seriously. And big and little things. We got to be there for one another with that. So thank you again for being with us. I really appreciate all the time you spent with us today. For our audience, I hope you like, click, and share, not because I'm a numbers changer, because I think it's important that we share conversations like this with people. There are people in your sphere of influence. I don't care if it's Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, X. People need this information, and the more we can put it out there, the more comfortable they're going to feel clicking on it, that it's okay. And I love having this, just casual conversation when we're talking from the heart. I think it's more interesting, and people know these are real stories and real lives that we're talking about, and that gives great comfort to people. So in addition to doing that, I ask people to also be what I call a giver of hope, and we have a little graphic that you can download on the site. And it just says, be a giver of hope. And it can be a we for a corporation or an organization, or an I if you're, want to put it on your personal Facebook page or website, whatever it might be. And we encourage people to link back to either Alzheimer's Speaks or link back to Dementia Map. And so if you've got resources, get in Dementia Map. You can get a free listing there, and then link back to not our homepage, but link back to your personal page. But it gets them in a space where they can scroll around and just do some research in a real safe place where no one's going to be asking them for personal information. And I think they're going to be real surprised at all the stuff that's available that they didn't know about.
Where do you find this Give Back Hope downloadable thing?
You can get it. I always put a link in the show notes, but if you just go to alzheimerspeaks.com, there's one right on the front page, and you can click on it. It'll bring you to our tools, and you scroll down the page. There's a couple different ones that you can pick from, and maybe you want to send it to a different direction as well. We also have them on Dementia Map. What I love about your book is it's about hope and it's about joy, and that's not always the story people hear. And there's so much hope and there's so much joy, and we're only going to find what we're looking for. So we have to help people look for the right thing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I love what you're doing, Lori. I'm sure it's beneficial and appreciated by a lot of people.
Well, and I appreciate everybody. None of us do this alone, or none of us should do it alone. And I don't think any of us should ever think that we got it all figured out, because there's always another twist or turn, and that's just life. So thanks again for being with us, everyone. And thanks for sharing your book. It's beautiful, and your family stories were wonderful. They're going to help a lot of people.
Thanks, Lori.
Okay, take care.
We'll talk
Bye,
again.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Hi, I'm Wendy Jones, host of Next Ups for Seniors Conversations on Aging podcast. Did you know that over 25 million Americans experience bladder leaks? Incontinence can happen to anyone at any time, and when it does, incontinence products are a necessity. But it can cost hundreds of dollars per month to purchase these products, which is why we're partnering with Airflow Urology to help you. Airflow Urology provides medical-grade incontinence care essentials like adult briefs, male guards, catheters, and more for free through your insurance. With Airflow, your favorite bladder control supplies are sent right to your doorstep with discreet monthly deliveries. Customers have reported close to $200 a month in savings with Airflow Urology, and over 2 million people have trusted Airflow. You can verify your insurance benefits by going on and filling out a quick 2-minute form. Check your eligibility Visit aeroflowurology.com. That's AEROFLOW urology.com.